We are now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the Transformative Vertical Flight Working Group, Public Service Sector meeting number 85. Today is Thursday, April 18th, 2024. Today we have a wonderful speaker, Mandy Nelson. She's Director, Business Development, Advanced Air Mobility at Bristow Group. And her topic will be ushering AAM into an operational reality. Mandy has been with Bristow for 14 years and currently leading the strategic relationship and business development for Bristow's AAM segment. In this role, she supports the company's global AAM effort by collaborating with AAM partner manufacturers, supporting states and federal advocacy related efforts, and coordinating with customers and other stakeholders to develop both initial and long-term use cases for the Bristow AAM fleet. And I have listened to Mandy's presentation before. They also looking at the public service sector, the use cases and so on. So it will fit our interests very, very well. Prior to Bristow's merger with Para Group in 2020, she served in various commercial and managerial functions supporting Legacy Air's traditional helicopter business line of services, including oil, gas, tour, leasing, firefighting. Yeah, see, she got it all covered. And Mandy is also a commercial fixed-wing pilot. Yeah, that always have a lot of respect for anybody who can get the commercial pilot license. And after that, we're going to talk about the follow-up our last month's discussion about the next white paper. And we're going to talk about the topic and status with Dr. Pavel. She's here with us from Netherlands, so it's late for her. Great to have her. So first thing first, let me go to the next page. Let's talk about a few meetings that's coming up. If I can. Okay, move the slide. There you go. Next week, I'll be at in San Diego. There's a exponential conference there. It's probably one of the world's, maybe the world's largest, most comprehensive drone unmanned aerial vehicle conference. A lot of topics, a lot of interest, and I think Grain, our leader for the Go Aero, is going to be there, so I'm going to catch her there and talk a little bit more about the common topics here. And in a couple of weeks, May 7th to 9th in Montreal, in Canada, it's the big vertical flight society, so Forum 80. Anybody who has not been to the Forum 80, that's a massive conference, a lot of good topic, a lot of good insight. So it'll be well worth it to be there. Also, in late May, there's the European Business Aviation Conference and Exhibition. So in Geneva, anybody in Europe definitely should stop by there. Also coming up is the June 17th to June 20th on the STM F-37 committee meeting. This time, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be in Oregon at Vance Aircraft headquarters. Vance is probably the world's largest jet airplane manufacturer. So just to visit there will be worth it. And the topic this time is going to be heavily focused on Mosaic, the new light sports aircraft rewrite the rule and updates and so on. So that is going to be a very worthwhile topic to attend, to engage. And of course, July 20th, 21st, it will be the 18th Annual Electric Aircraft Symposium. again, organized by Vertical Flight Society right before Oshkosh, 2 days before, just the 2 days right before Oshkosh. So it's, I like the arrangement. It make my travel easier. So encourage everybody to join there. Join us there. Right after that is the Oshkosh. So anybody who has not been to the Oshkosh, at least you owe yourself to be there once in your life. That's a different kind of experience, different than those conference room professional settings. Oshkosh, everything, anybody, any kind of airplane that you like about aviation, got to be there. And right after that is the Aviation Forum by AIAA. It's in August, July 29th to August 2nd in Vegas. So look at the schedule. I decided to just go to the Electric Aircraft Symposium, followed by Oshkosh, fly right to Vegas before I make back to my home base. So anybody want to join me, make a wing tour? That would be great to see you guys there. All right, so that's that. And with that, I'm going to, anybody else has any interesting meetings, conference activities that want to bring up? Okay. We can always cover that at the end of the meeting if you think of anything that will be worthwhile. Let everybody know. So with
Sorry,
that,
John.
oh,
Sorry,
go
Johnny,
ahead.
I was struggling with my mute button.
Okay.
There's the AIA, or the Aviation Insurance Association conference, that slips in right before Forum 80 in New Orleans. I think it's the 4th through the 6th, and Pivotal will be there on a panel discussion talking about insurance and the insurability of personal eVTOLs, and one of their Dean Owen, one of their first owners, will be on that panel as well. So it should be a really interesting conversation, and one of the few introductory AAM use cases that's showing up in the insurance space.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. At we talked about the previous times and these organized meetings that insurance is a very important topic. So anybody who can make it, that would be interesting. Okay, great.
And Johnny, also since we're on the topic, 1st to the 3rd of May. Yeah, so just before the Forum 80, eVTOL Insights is coming to Montreal as well. So I'm sure everyone knows about it, but I just thought I'd mention it.
Okay, super, great, thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Mandy take over. Mandy, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Hi, everyone. There's some familiar faces on here. So hello to those of you I know, and hello to those of you I don't yet know. Pretty exciting time in our industry. So let's see if I can be successful at the screen share. Let's see.
And while Mandy is doing that, can we have everybody go ahead and put themselves on mute so we don't have dogs, cats, and pigs in the background?
I've warned my own personal feline to stay away. Well, hello, everyone. I know some of you have probably heard at least snippets of this at other conferences and whatnot before, but as the industry and as Bristow's kind of positioning evolves, it's always nice to touch base with the Vertical Flight Society. I have to give my VFS disclaimer. I am not an aerospace engineer or a PhD of any kind, but I've been in the vertical flight community for several years now. And so hopefully some of the perspectives that I can share today from the operator's perspective are of value. At the end of the day, we're, Bristow and operators like us are, the folks that lease these aircraft and use them day to day. And so finding use cases and making, viable businesses out of them is of importance. So hopefully I can share a little bit about how Bristow is viewing the sector and some of the initiatives that we have internally, also some of the challenges and opportunities that we see. So we'll start just kind of go through a quick Bristow 101. Bristow's been around for a long time. We've been operating for more than 75 years, primarily helicopters. Today, our fleet is made up of just over 220 aircraft, and it's a varied fleet. So we operate everything from single engine A-stars, 139s, 189s, up to S92s, and kind of a few makes and models in between that. So a diverse fleet. We employ just over 3,000 people globally, and that is made up of about 800 pilots and 800 mechanics, of course, and then all of the support and G&A staff as well. Today, Bristow has a presence on 6 continents, and I believe it's 17 countries as of today, either through direct operations or leasing partners, what have you. But we have our footprint pretty much all over the globe at this point. I started my career with the company with Era helicopters. And when Era and Bristow merged in 2020, we really created one of the largest and most comprehensive, I would say, commercial vertical flight portfolio's in the world. So it's been really exciting to kind of start on the Era side and grow into Bristow, and have Bristow, since the merger, kind of express and dedicate resources to this emerging segment of vertical flight. So it's been pretty exciting that way. Today, Bristow is, we're known for our offshore energy business, right? We move people, to offshore energy installations and back to shore. We also provide search and rescue services for our customers directly. But we also operate search and rescue services on behalf of governments around the globe as well. So, for example, we operate the helicopter search and rescue service in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands. We're about to spool up our Ireland search and rescue business. So government services is a growing segment for us. And then, of course, our offshore energy sector. Bristow, go ahead. Maybe there's just an echo. Bristow is publicly traded under the ticker VTOL, which I think everyone on the call can probably appreciate. So I think that's a pretty cool one. We'll move on to the next slide here. So I just want to start on safety, because this is where we always start, and it's obviously the most important thing to us in our business, and of course to you all in the broader industry as well. Safety is our highest operational priority. It's our #1 core value, and that commitment is evidenced through all levels of our organization. So I'm personally very proud to work with an organization that has led on safety management systems, safety culture, and also kind of more broadly through the industry too, with our helping found and participate in Heli Offshore, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but that is a collaboration of vertical flight operators, dedicated to increasing safety and raising safety in the offshore operational environment. And so all of that history and how we've approached safety in our traditional helicopter business, of course, directly informs how we view advanced air mobility and the introduction of those operations moving forward. So a little bit more about safety, but I want to talk a little bit about advanced air mobility, of course, and why it's important to a legacy operator like Bristow and how we kind of view this segment. So for more than 75 years now, Bristow's been delivering that safe, efficient, and reliable vertical flight service. And our vision today is to be the leader in the operation of innovative and sustainable vertical flight solutions. So I say that not that Bristow is going to be replacing our helicopter services with advanced air mobility services. But we really
Hey, Mandy, there's some echo in your voice. Somebody Yeah, can everybody turn off their mic so that we don't get an echo? Thank you so much.
Let's try this now. Is there still an echo?
Seems to be
Okay.
okay now. Thank you.
To be okay. Great. So with that said, you know, as an operator, we want to lead in this space, right? We don't just want to participate it. And we see these emerging aircraft really as, you know, the next evolution of vertical flight. And again, not as a replacement of our traditional helicopters, but additive to our traditional business. So a way to expand vertical flight capabilities, service our existing customers in a new way, and also enter new market segments. But I do get a lot of questions around replacement of helicopters with advanced air mobility vehicles, and we don't necessarily see that, maybe in a few limited segments, which we can talk about further down the road. But really, it's an expansion for Bristow. I think, you know, as an operator, we've been spending those several decades, you know, honing our, of course, like flight operations expertise, but also honing our expertise in the development of a robust safety culture, the adoption and maturation of various technical and safety innovations like HUMS and FOQA, and the different technical applications on the aircraft themselves and putting them in new environments. Maintenance programs. I think Bristow's really led and honed in the flight crew training department, passenger movement, supply chain. There's a whole lot of branches of skills and competency that go into our operation today that are quite applicable when we think about the introduction of electric and hybrid propulsion systems in our future. Our view is that, you know, this legacy, this experience is not just a nice to have in terms of introducing new aircraft, but that it really is going to be critical in terms of a safe and smooth and reliable introduction of new aircraft into the fleet. Let's see, we'll move on to the next one here. So you may be aware, Bristow has several partners throughout the industry, and we're collaborating with them in a variety of different ways, but largely it's Bristow bringing our operational experience to the table, to helping inform some of the decisions around aircraft, either not necessarily capability, configuration, that's the word I'm looking for. Configuration, different applications for these aircraft, working with our partners on advocacy related work, and of course, looking at different markets to see where we can actually fit these aircraft into our existing operations, and also which ones are better placed to enter new, brand new markets as well. So just as we do with our traditional fleet today, we intend to operate a very diverse fleet of advanced air mobility aircraft in the future. So, you know, we have A-Stars, we have S-92s, we see Electras, and we see Elroys, and we see Volocopters in the future Bristow fleet as well. We see cargo movement, we see passenger movement. So it really is building out a robust network capability that takes various different types of aircraft in order to ensure a reliable service, but also efficiency of service. Yep.
Hey, Mandy, you were cutting in and out a little bit on the voice. The video.
No, I had her 5x5. She was clear here, Johnny. Might be on your end.
Yeah, same, Johnny.
I was clear.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, good.
So that's my
Sorry,
side
Johnny.
then. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I think from Bristow's perspective, you know, before we bring mass transportation using this technology to the public and begin operations in densely populated areas, we believe it's incumbent upon us to build a simple operating network that starts off with very reduced risk, that, you know, that is operating well below the limitations, range and payload limitations of the aircraft, and then build from there. And I think that's really Bristow's thesis when we talk about introducing these aircraft. It starts small, start in less complex environments, and then expand from there. So today I want to touch on just a couple of the challenges, opportunities, and also some of the observations that we see within the industry. There's a lot, of course, but I'll highlight just a couple today. We see them as challenges for ourselves as Bristow, but also for the industry as a whole. So this will start here. The first observation that I guess I'll highlight is that occasionally I get the sense that there is a notion that advanced air mobility aircraft are so advanced in terms of their design and technology that there's this pressure maybe to leapfrog the evolution of operational development and expansion. So yes, the aircraft are increasingly simplified, right? Easy to fly, as we were talking about earlier. They have these redundant electric or hybrid propulsion systems and simplified human interaction. And we see this as completely revolutionary, of course, but I think where the challenge comes in is wondering if all this confidence in the kind of the safety by aircraft design is perhaps introducing pressure to move too quickly to kind of a scaled, mature, high tempo operation in, maybe even a dense urban environment. And I do think we'll get there, but I think we notice maybe an increased pressure to get there quickly. So for Bristow, our view is that an early stage advanced air mobility operation should probably be, in our view, it's going to be probably business to business for Bristow, supporting a logistics network, probably moving cargo first, likely in an industrial area. And like I said, operating well below the capability of the new aircraft that we're actually introducing. So, and then expanding from there, of course. I think, it continues to be important for Bristow and probably for the industry as a whole to look back at the beginning of the aerospace industry and the beginning of our vertical operations, apply those lessons learned, and to really be pragmatic in our general approach. And I do think that we can accomplish this at a pace that justifies the technical and financial investments that have and will continue to need to be made to see these, aircraft development and progress into a business. But we don't want to move too fast, right? So I think the second observation, and I've heard more about this in the past several months. So I think we're on a positive track here just with industry discussion. But in general, I think we're probably still taking public perception a bit for granted. And in some cases, setting what I think are maybe some unrealistic expectations, especially as it relates to early operations. Setting expectations for like a futuristic mass transit, point-to-point, on-demand transportation system. To be clear, I think we'll get there, right? I think the promise of AAM is huge, but we see it as a progression. I think the beautiful renderings that we see that I have here of vertiports and of aircraft really help build excitement and bring investment to the sector, which obviously is so critical. And I think, like I said, I think someday we'll get to an operation that looks like this. But as we start, I think it's really important for us to espouse reality to the businesses, to customers, to the public, to observers of these early operations. And I think early on, that is, utilizing some existing infrastructure, limited networks, probably higher pricing to start until we can get to a point where we can scale, bring the costs down, and actually deliver on these point-to-point or, more, I call them futuristic, but I agree they're well on their way too. So I think as it relates to public perception generally, though, I acknowledge that I might be a bit jaded simply because I've been working in the helicopter industry for so long. And my introduction to the helicopter industry was working in the air tour industry near national parks and very close to communities. And so I've participated in several community engagement meetings, city council meetings that have been spirited, I would say, and has maybe affected my perception. So, but I think the notion that the public is just going to be so ready to embrace these new solutions and to do that very quickly is probably something we shouldn't take for granted. I was just in, I'm sure some of you read about this, but I was just in New York City this week, and I had the privilege of sitting in on their city council meeting, which was dedicated 100% to helicopter noise. That was interesting. You know, the public was there. There were a lot of hats and t-shirts and pins, and they're a very enthusiastic group, working to stop like all non-essential helicopter operations out of the city's heliports. That's not a new effort by any means, but I think meetings like that are a good cautionary tale for the emerging advanced air mobility business. City councils, state legislatures, such a hard word to say, departments of transportation, and of course the public, like all are critical to this sector's and us as an operator to our success. And it's our duty to earn that trust with them. So anyways, I sat there listening to all of this discussion about helicopter noise. It's such an opportunity for advanced air mobility aircraft to come in and improve the situation or improve on some of the concerns around aircraft noise. But I think espousing reality again comes to the top of the page here. We have to be realistic in what we espouse. I've been lucky enough to see and hear a lot of eVTOL flights in person, and they are, like, of course, substantially quieter, but they're not silent. And so I think as we engage with communities, we have to be transparent about what we're bringing, what the benefits are, not just what the direct benefits are for the person that gets to get on the aircraft and save time or whatever, but what are the benefits to the broader community? What's the perceived benefit? I mean, how is that being perceived within a community, within a city council? And go from there. So I think it's a challenge for us to be transparent in our communication about what to expect, what the benefits are. And I think that those discussions are highly localized, which I think the broader industry, of course, appreciates. But I think getting in there early, being transparent, acknowledging what any adverse impacts might be or what a transition period might be, I think that'll help us build these critical partnerships that will be so important as we scale up an operation, especially in like an urban environment where you kind of maybe in some cases already have a skeptical group, and it's on us to earn their trust, build the trust, and then keep our promises. So I think of that. The next observation I would say is kind of this discussion, and I get it because the whole industry has to be focused on certification, but there seems to be this unspoken assumption that once an aircraft is certified, that we now somehow have a viable business case. And in a lot of my discussions, I know the manufacturers and developers understand that that is not necessarily true. There's a lot of work to be done once we have a certified aircraft. But I do think there's a lot of folks that hold this assumption. So, the promise of AAM is vast, right? And it's grand. And I think we probably haven't even begun to grasp all the different applications of these various vehicles and how they might be used. Sure, we can imagine, but there's probably lots of applications that we haven't even thought of yet as an industry. And I think at Bristow, we see benefits beyond the obvious, reducing our carbon footprint and sustainability benefits. and it's also not limited to urban mobility networks. But so for Bristow specifically, how can we help our customers move goods, right, in a more efficient way onshore, just moving stuff, right, from one onshore hub to another onshore hub? How can we help them move their people to the hub in more efficient and safer ways? And so there really is broad benefit here. So I think the assumption around certified aircraft and viable business, sometimes it feels like there's not always a full appreciation for the complexity of a day-to-day, especially high-scale operation. As you all know, especially in this group, deploying aircraft that fly vertically and, you know, as their primary means of takeoff and landing, and fly in low altitude airspace, and either, you know, in highly populated areas or even in very remote areas. That type of operation introduces hazards and risks that, of course, are not associated with fixed wing operations from airports. It's fundamentally different, and in some ways fundamentally has different, and in some cases more risk than those types of operations. It's very complex. So adding to this already complex nature of this type of operation, now we're introducing a new aircraft, right, with novel propulsion, new control systems, new airframe architecture, and in many cases, the aircraft developers, this is the first aircraft that they've developed. In many cases not, and I appreciate that too, but we have a lot of first timers here, which is awesome, and it's also increased complexity. So we also are talking about new business models, you know, entirely new environments of operating, or a new way of operating, and starting these new systems with entirely new products is a pretty daunting task. Not that it can't be done. We absolutely think that it can, but we just think there's a way to do it. So, you know, during these day-to-day operations, you have, you know, passengers embarking and disembarking, seatbelts that are, you know, hang outside the door and need to be properly, you know, stowed away. The interior upholsteries are kind of getting torn apart with constant use. Doors are opening, doors are closing, bags loaded and unloaded, charging, all of these different things that, you know, can really beat up an aircraft, right? And then additionally, in the operational environment, now we're talking about different weather conditions and rain and lightning, sleet, sand, extreme heat, extreme cold. And I think flight test can certainly consider and prepare for many of these environments, of course, but it can't fully replicate them. And so there's going to be a lot of things in early operations that are major learnings for the operators and for the manufacturers as well. So, you know, our fleet and today's traditionally powered, you know, commercial aircraft have been put through all of these paces already. And there's, you know, system enhancements that have been put in place, and product improvements, you know, and lessons learned about ground handling and flight operations and maintenance practices. And all of that has been refined, which results in, you know, this reliable and efficient transportation system. But there's a lot of learnings that happen before we get to this reliable solution. And it's really the air carriers, the operators, that will need to deal directly with these pressures, right? With a variety of inputs from, you know, the ecosystem, from government, from the community, from our customers. And we'll need to take a very disciplined and experienced approach to these initial operations. And this means that an operator has to have some wherewithal, right? They have to have, you know, the technical, the public relations, the financial strength to get through those early phases of commercial flight operations to when we get to those very much more dense, high tempo, scaled operations. So those are kind of some of the things that we see. And then you can see just on this slide here, this is kind of a visual of how Bristow thinks about building into increasingly complex environment. cargo first, short distance, moving into passenger movement, regional air mobility. And then you can see at the end, are these urban air mobility models, which we think are incredibly promising. We just really believe that there's a step-by-step approach to get there to ensure that we do it not only safely, which is critical, of course, but that we can do it efficiently and reliably for the end customer as well. So, we are a very nascent industry, developing and operationalizing pretty revolutionary technology. And so I think, what we're doing and what we encourage other operators to do as well is to go through the full process of operational readiness, of early operations, limited commercial operations, scaled commercial operations. There's a couple old adages that kind of come to mind. Of course, the one is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And then the other one that we use a lot at Bristow is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I think if we can have a smooth, implementation of these new aircraft into our fleet, then the industry can really experience broad success. And I don't just mean Bristow, I mean all operators. It's so critical to have these early, safe, visible, demonstrated, successful operations so that we really can scale and achieve the goals of the broader industry. So that is kind of the end of, I would say, my prepared remarks. But if there's time, I would love to take a few questions. I see a couple. Hold on, I couldn't see these coming in as I was sharing my screen. Are we in the Middle East? Yes, Bristow has an office in Riyadh, and we are looking at both traditional and advanced air mobility services and offerings in the Middle East broadly. Yes. Any other questions? Scott, who wants throw darts?
Yeah, really appreciate the pragmatism. I think it's well advised in the industry that's as nascent as this is. A general question for you about urban air mobility. So I think what I think I heard were probably multiple elements that guided as to why that would be the last, comparatively speaking, of the four. But I just want to see if I understood kind of the primary element. Was it primarily around community acceptance and awareness and infrastructure, or just, the urban environment and density and really scaling operations? And because the reason I'm asking is you can appreciate there's a lot of investment money that's targeting that particular segment, perhaps with the expectation that it'll be earlier than you might have suggested in your point.
Yeah. So of course the answer is yes to all of those things. I think obviously infrastructure is kind of a key unlock that has to happen for UAM to scale. I do think, we're optimistic about some very limited urban air mobility operations, probably earlier, of course, than like scaled operations. But I think from a community engagement perspective, we can't be espousing like on-demand mass transit, right? Because that's not what it's going to look like for several years for a variety of reasons. One of the big ones being infrastructure. So for Bristow, it's where can we demonstrate and build operational experience on these new aircraft so that then, yes, we can kind of achieve the task of operating in a dense, high-paced environment of operations. But yeah, a lot of it is just the unlock of infrastructure as well. I mean, urban air mobility, as you all know, and I'm sure you've heard, it's happening today with helicopters, right? It's just not at a large scale for a variety of reasons. And so I think you will see some of those early operations in a limited way. And I of course, want and hope that those are very successful so that we can scale. But I do see a longer horizon for scaled UAM maybe than others in the industry. Awesome. Any other questions?
Other questions?
Hi, Mandy. I have a question. Thanks for the presentation. It's great. Is there, you talked about the AAM. Is there, a payload range kind of perspective that you're looking for from Bristow Group? in terms of the shorter eVTOLs, with smaller payload, smaller ranges with between 50 miles. Is that something that's in your horizon as well?
Yeah, I mean, so Volocopter, for example, is one of our partners, and we're looking at some limited use applications for the VoloCity, for example, which has a very limited range. Of course, Volocopter is also working on aircraft that will eventually, have longer range. To answer your question, I think there's application for short range, fully electric vehicles within a Bristow network, right? I think our goal is to use the right tool for the right mission. So right now, maybe I have to hotshot a part offshore that's a washer, and I'm using an S92 to do that. So it's not very efficient, right? So what exists within our network that is maybe short range that we can do most efficiently? And I do think that there's some short range missions within our network for our existing customers even today.
Awesome, thank you.
Mandy, you had mentioned some of the pushback in terms of general public on conventional helicopters in urban areas like New York. And that, like, to your point, that's not a new thing. How do you see AAM and electrified aviation as a solution for that? And how quickly do you think that, or slowly, can and should that scale up to replace some of the conventional helicopter utilization that we've lost over the past 40 years of erosion?
Yeah, I mean, my personal take is that Air Tours is one of the first traditional helicopter segments that is kind of ripe for AAM transition. Single engine, good weather, round robin. I thought two things sitting in there, right? One is what an opportunity, but man, if we don't get this right, we already have a really engaged constituency that is going to be ready to fight back, right? And so I don't want 10 years down the road to be sitting in another city council meeting that's focused on eVTOLs. And so I think that's where all of the transparency and early transparency comes in. And I think we have to get those types of operators involved and interested in eVTOLs as well, because I don't know. I mean, how quick should it be? I don't think it should be so fast that people are operating aircraft that they don't have any experience on. And I think that can take a few years, right? An operator needs to get to know the aircraft, needs to build up time on it, needs to get the maintenance procedures in place. I kind of see like a middle ground with something like this, and we're not looking to operate Air Tours in New York, to be clear, but it's introducing an eVTOL, but backing it up with a helicopter for a while, as we kind of grow the business. That's kind of how I would see it. And I would think that transition could take a year or two, depending on how it goes. But yeah, I see it as we can get in there and really like ease some of the pain, like the technology is so ripe to ease some of that pain. And also we better get it right, because there are t-shirts and hats and pins that are maybe working against us if we don't, And fair enough. I totally understood the folks. I totally understand.
I get it as well. Thank you so much. Danny, take it over from here, buddy.
Hi, Mandy. Great talk. I was curious. You've already talked a little bit about some use cases, but I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little more detail of the, maybe top 2 or 3 use cases where you expect to see the first, introduction of, let's say, MVP deployments of the aircraft. And then also, I was curious, particularly when you mentioned the, running a washer out onto offshore use case, to what extent UAVs are starting to fit into, your thoughts and use cases related to Bristow?
Yeah, great question. So I think initially, our thesis and we believe that our existing customer base, which is generally large energy customers, have use cases for this, right? They're moving a ton of stuff onshore. I think primarily we are looking at moving cargo onshore first, both in a piloted and an unpiloted capacity. We see that as very ripe use case. So you'll know Elroy Air is one of our partners as well. So they're, kind of a hybrid, of course, longer range, higher payload. But there is opportunities out there within our existing business, our existing offshore business, to move things offshore in a much more efficient way. I don't think we'll be flying eVTOLs offshore, and especially piloted passenger eVTOLs, anytime soon. They just don't have the capability, obviously, that a helicopter has. But I agree, UAVs are of interest, certainly, for offshore movements, and our customers have expressed some of that as well. So there's a lot of new markets, of course, but we're looking to use what we have, right? What infrastructure, what customer base do we have that we can really start to build some of these use cases out? And then, of course, enter some of the new markets, which I think we're well positioned to do as well. But cargo first is important for us.
Maybe another quick question. I know that as with AAMs and particularly the air taxi use cases and vertiports on top of buildings, as you start digging deeper, you find that getting the electrical infrastructure up to the rooftops is probably more complex than had been anticipated, which made me think a little bit about offshore rigs and electricity. Is the architecture of those rigs conducive to and already providing a good platform for providing those type of electrical capabilities, or is that a significant area of thought that needs to go into it?
Yeah, there are people that are much smarter than me at Bristow about offshore rig installations. So let me just caveat that. But I think offshore electric charging is probably a ways off. There may be opportunities for some decommissioned rigs to test that out. But I think for any operation, especially early operation, we wouldn't be charging offshore, right? That aircraft would have to get to its platform and get back on the charging that's onshore. But yeah, I think I said this, but to be clear, we do not see eVTOLs flying offshore in the near term. We're going to fly 139s, 189s, S92s offshore, supplement our business where we can with the emerging technology.
Great, thank you.
Brandon?
Hey, Mandy, great presentation. Being an old Air Force guy, really happy to hear all the very pragmatic sort of operational considerations. So just very well done in general. My question surrounds along those lines, and I think the last question highlighted a bit in terms of charging infrastructure being a challenge. Your take on hybrid versus pure electric. So obviously we're building a hybrid electric aircraft that seemed to make the most sense from a pragmatic operational perspective. And we took a little bit of flack for that over the last couple of years, not as sustainable or whatever, but I think that tide is kind of turning, but I don't want to presuppose your response. I was just curious on your personal take.
Love hybrid. Electra.aero is one of our partners, and that aircraft and that type of range is really important for a network like Bristow, right? We need something that has capability and range to go farther than 100 miles. And so therefore we think it's a really important piece of the puzzle. And it's I know that there's been some flack given in the hybrid world, but Elroy is, hybrid as well. It's a really important step that still provides a level of capability that the industry needs. So love it.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, really
also
well
love the ticker, HOVR. Clever. Almost as good as VTOL.
Yeah, you guys stole the best one. So
I know it was good timing. Johnny, I know you have other things, and so I don't want to take up the whole time. But yeah, if there's not any more immediate critical questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly too. If you have questions, I'm happy to sidebar and
that would
chat.
be great. Yeah, I appreciate that. The really excellent presentation. Right on point. I mean, some of the things that we talk about, do it right. To take our time, do it right. Take it progressively, develop the industry. I think that's going to be critical for all the use cases and so on. So super. Thank you so much. And everybody.
I don't know how to put your hand up, but anyway, can I make a quick comment on the
Go ahead, Todd.
Gentleman Horizon? What we witnessed with Rolls-Royce is they took all of the all-electric technology out of that Siemens, I guess, a German company, and now they're dumping it all. Now, if you go into the Rolls-Royce press releases and everything, you find that they think this all battery stuff is not the way to go. It's kind of crap, and never will be. And what they say is make the fuel sustainable. Okay, make the fuel sustainable, and then once you get all your fuel from zero emission, get that to zero emissions, then the airplanes don't have to change hardly at all. They just have to learn how to burn these sustainable fuels. So anyway, so just to looking at what Rolls-Royce did, that's their attitude.
Hey, Todd, we had a great article in Vertiflight in the March-April issue on Rolls-Royce, and I think it's more of a need for near-term cash, and so they decided to divest the long-range play on electric, more than well.
Yeah, but if you
that also plays into it as well, I think.
Yeah, but if you go into the Rolls-Royce press releases and really burrow around, you'll see that there's a segment in there on, look, people, we have to make the fuels sustainable. We have to get to zero emissions with the fuels, and then we don't have to mess with the aircraft very much.
Well, I think this is a topic that we probably need a whole session, maybe 3 sessions to discuss, because there's a lot of opinions, a lot of possibilities. Maybe we'll have to do them all, but to move into the future. But for now, I think that we can cover the in-depth discussion on this particular topic today. So, but thanks for bringing it up. And Mandy, thank you again. And everybody who, if you have interest in engage further, please do so with Mandy. If you don't have the contact directly, let me know. I'll get you guys connected for sure. And we do have another topic that we'd like to cover, which is Dr. Pavel will give us a little talk about the not the lengthy talk, but the update. Let me put it that way, on where we are on the white paper. So let me do that. If I can find the right screen. Yeah, there you go. Can you all see this one?
Yes. Johnny, if you can put it in a full view, then probably would be better.
How's that?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
And go to the first page up.
Oh, this is not the first. Yeah, there you go.
That's the one. So good evening from Europe. It's getting dark here. So I had a few discussions with Johnny, and we discussed about a new white paper. As we put a white paper a few years ago, and then we thought, okay, let's see what happened in the meanwhile. I tried to make a kind of layout and thoughts, and now I take you 5 minutes to just go with you through these points. So we think to say, okay, personal compact eVTOL revolution, and we are going to concentrate on recreational, personal, and the public services, of course. And I've thought that we are going to divide the paper in a kind of 6 chapters. And first, we are going to look at what is the current industry status and what are the continuous challenges. We have seen challenges 10 years ago when we started, and we put a roadmap. There are new challenges now. And let's see what has been done and how it's going to be in the future. So that would be a kind of introduction. Then I thought that we are going to move to a kind of use cases, and we are going to pick up a few a few cases that we think are interesting for the moment on the recreational, personal, and the public service missions. We are thinking to link to the GoAero competition as a first responder for operations. GoAero were this week in Delft, the faculty. We had a session with students that would be interested to subscribe and to put to go in the first stage, second, and the third stage of the competition. So I think it would be interesting to have it like a public involvement in the white paper. Then I was thinking of the certification reform efforts. And Johnny sent me, let's say we discussed about the mosaic. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this effort with the new way of doing certification of the FAA. And I will talk a bit. I would like to talk a little bit about the infrastructure reform efforts, and I'm wondering what are we doing in order to reform our infrastructure for the urban air mobility of the moment, and then just to end with a kind from where to where. Now, Johnny said to me, okay, Marilena, just put some contributors so that we get people involved. So I put myself, of course, and I put Johnny, and I see a few people here that probably would want to contribute. So please, if you are interested to contribute to a new paper, just send a mail to Johnny and or to me. Then to the next slide, Johnny. And there I started to think what we are going to write in the beginning. And I said there, okay, the current industry status. I put first a point where I said, okay, design, but from where to start? Because up to now, we have done design mainly for the maximum takeoff weight. Everything was performance. But I see on the conferences more and more different approaches for this kind of urban air mobility for the designer. So the industry probably is going to start in the future from a different point of designing. For example, there was one very interesting paper where they start designing from the point of failures of the system. Or I saw papers where we're already thinking incorporating handling qualities. So for example, for recreational use, you already think of that. But if you incorporate handling qualities, then you will see that your maximum takeoff weight can increase. So that is a problem when you use battery. So probably I thought it would be interesting to make a kind of discussion on, yeah, what is actually happening in this area. We have complex tools, so we can use very comprehensive analysis tools and optimization. But on the other side, there will always be trade-offs that we need to do, and design is a kind of unknown circle, so you need to know from where you start your design. So I thought it would be interesting to talk in the white paper. And then, of course, it was also here, are we going to use hybrid or non-hybrid? What kind of source? Are you going to use electric? Are we going to go to hydrogen? In Europe, there is a huge amount of going towards hydrogen. Is that the solution? In what time frame? So let's look a little bit at the moment. There is another hype, AI or non-AI. What is that, and what is security on that? So there are all kinds of new discussions that we can do. Then safety would be important, sustainability will be economics. Then chicken or egg problem with recharging equipment, where are going to put? Then insurance, what kind of problems are going to bring those? So I've thought that we are going to make a kind of discussion of the moment. For the use cases up to now, so that would be the second chapter, we had a kind of recreational use, personal use, corporate business transport, and that was when we were thinking of a white paper on the personal air mobility. So probably we are going to introduce with cargo. So here I definitely need contributors to think of the good white use cases. Then I said to you, link to the GoAero. For the certification reform effort, I think we can address this white paper as well to the certification authorities. Because when I was thinking, so I read about this mosaic and about the FAA, but then I started thinking of the qualification of the flight simulators. So in 2018 also, they were discussing basically what happened, the flight simulator training devices, they were divided in 4 levels, level A, B, C, D, and then they changed the requirements and went from the level 1 to 7, where you have a much more variation into the levels, and that gave the possibility to the industry of simulators to go and let's say expand the simulator business. So definitely the certification reforms that we are going to see will allow the technology advancement. Now, that happened, of course, at the moment with the FAA, because FAA at the moment, they have a kind of, I was reading, they have new policies and additional guidance. So they think we are going to take extra care for the really new major changes that we made in our vehicles. And that will actually propose the automation. I'm sure of that. On the other side, so FAA is doing this mosaic and part 103, so they are trying, but of course, safety is always the most important. And they were also put the Boeing safety culture. So already there is a kind of recertification, and there is a lot of discussion there. Okay, how much culture of safety did we add and where to add? Now, if you look at the EASA, that's an interesting point in Europe, because they are going to introduce new rules on noise. And I've seen EASA where they say they see what is the importance in the acceptance in the use of urban air mobility, and societally in Europe more people make a fuss about noise than about safety. Okay, so if you safety is first, second, and third. But here they are going to introduce noise rules on noise, on sustainability. So I think that would be a quite of nice discussions to see at the moment what kind of certification efforts would be. So in this, I would like as well your contribution, let's say from, I don't know, from your point of view, what do you expect? What would be the needed for the certification? Okay, and that was, and I have a final slide. Then I'm ready. And that I presented at the Transformative Vertical Flight, and that comes from a Nikolsky lecture from Robert Houston. And look what are the problem that can be in the future. There is a discussion between a father and a teenager. And the teenager says, "Bob, can I use a tilt rotor a week from Friday night?" And then the father says, "Son, why can't you take a sport copter? It's only 70 miles. And then teenager, "Well, actually, Susie wants to go to friends and their dates to, so I really need a tilt rotor." And then they said, "Okay, don't forget to renew your license, and no erotic activity on the back seat. The automatic system will determine your flight path. So federal illegal substances. So probably those are new things that you need to think that will happen when you are introducing kind of scaling up the this kind of way of flying." And that is my end of my thoughts. Those are the slides that I made.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Marilena. Since we tried to publish the report before the end of the year, which means we only have maybe 3 months to put the content together, and because the editing, publishing take time, we know that from past experience. So anyone who's we don't have time today to dive into further discussion, we'll leave some time next month for additional online discussion. But anybody who's interested in engaging, please contact Marilinda and myself. And which chapter, which portion of the report you like to work on, or if you like to be a reviewer, that will be very much welcome as well. So with that, I thank Dr. Pavel and Mandy for excellent talk and presentation. And since our time for this session is up, so I'll see you guys on the next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Marielena.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Mike, if we can, I think we can stop the recording if you haven't already done so.